Welcome to Genuine Humans, exploring the stories behind the great marketing leaders of our time and hearing how their journeys have influenced the brands they've built. Brought to you by The Social Element, here are our hosts, Tamara Littleton, CEO and founder, and Wendy Christie, Chief People Officer.
Welcome back to the Genuine Humans podcast, and I'm here as always with the lovely Wendy Christie. Wendy, how are you doing?
Hi, Tamara. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. How are you today?
I'm good, actually. I think I'm still benefiting from the fact that recently I had a trip to the zoo, actually, talking about nothing to do with work, but I always think it's good to sort of balance things. But yeah, I had a zookeeper for the day experience with my girlfriend and her two boys, and I think I may have been enjoying it even more than them, actually, because it was just the most wonderful thing, sort of feeding lemurs and things like that at Colchester. So yeah, I think it's good to get that balance, isn't it?
That sounds really, really lovely. I think that might be my weekend nailed.
So we are joined today by Michelle Goodall, and Michelle is the Chief Marketing Officer of Guild. Welcome, Michelle.
Oh, hello, Tamara. Nice to see you.
Michelle, we're going to jump straight into the kind of the background story. I love to know how people got to where they are now. So do you want to just sort of share a bit more? Well, maybe share about what you're doing at Guild and then go backwards as far as you want and just talk about how you got to where you are.
Back into your childhood.
We'll definitely go there.
Yes, I've heard the other ones. You do go there, and I'm ready. I'm braced. So yeah, let's go backwards. Guild is a platform for professional communities and networking. When people describe it, it's a bit like the best bits of WhatsApp and the best bits of LinkedIn smushed together. It's a place and a space where people can create private communities or professional communities, public communities. It's easy to use. It's mobile first. Listen to me, I'm a marketer here. It's like a consumer messaging app, but it is purpose-built for professionals and business. So GDPR compliant, ad-free, privacy by design, and people can custom brand their own communities and obviously get all of the juicy admin and analytics features. And I'm CMO there. I'm in my second iteration. I was head of marketing. I got poached and then loved Guild so much that I went back to Guild. And we're really sort of, I think, we're poised for greatness in 2022. That's how I'm going to introduce Guild at the moment.
Brilliant. I'm a big fan of Guild as well.
Thank you. So you want to know about me when I was little?
Just start where you want, but I think everything is connected. So yeah, just jump on in.
I think it is. So I'm the youngest of three girls. I've got two big sisters. My elder sister is 7 years older than me, and my middle sister 3.5 years older than me. I was the last, and I was a bit of a mistake, as my mum said, but a lovely mistake. I think they were quite hoping for a little boy, so I was very much, the girl who was running around, kicking footballs, climbing trees. Basically, I was always on a building site because my dad was a builder and an untrained architect. We actually built our own home, and I helped to do that as well. So I was a bit of a bricklayer at the age of 6 or 7. Yeah, my dad was a big kind of influence, I think, on me and, the Michelle of today. He was an entrepreneur. He was an architect, but never a REBA-trained architect. He did it off his own bat and learned his trade, but was very good at what he did. Built loads of houses in Norfolk. If you go to places like Old Catton or Spixworth, you'll see loads of my dad's quite modern 1970s and 1960s houses. And we built our own house. We built this wonderful massive pile in a tiny hamlet in North Norfolk, and it was very modern. My dad loved, Conran and Habitat and all of those things. It was way ahead of its time, and his business was successful. But unfortunately, he was subject to a very, very bad debt from somebody. Actually was owed quite a lot of money in the early 80s. And as a kind of a consequence, we lost our house and went from being a lovely, upper working class family who went on a couple of French holidays a year and enjoyed the finer things in life to having no money, and my mum and dad having to explain that we couldn't have just juice or roller cola on our shopping list. And those kind of things. But I, up until that time, I had an absolute idyllic childhood. I was always out being mischievous, making people laugh, kind of rolling down trees and building mines under the ground. I was a proper sport Billy. And my sisters also called me Mimi. Not because that was how I sort of described myself, but because I was always going, look at me, making people laugh, performing. I used to do impressions when we used to go on holiday to Butlins and do my Tommy Cooper impressions and things like that. So, yeah, I was definitely a bit of a show off, but also I think a bit of a speed freak. I had no boundaries. I was able to kind of grow up without sort of worrying about cars on the road and hang out with my friends and do really, really, really crazy things. So it was very happy-go-lucky and it was wonderful. And then everything sort of turned at the age of 13. And that's when I think probably one of the biggest things that has had an impact on my career happened. So my dad lost his business and essentially they had to kind of figure out what to do because when you lose your business, you also lose your house as well. And they decided to run a pub. My mum had been working in a pub and was in the kitchen and worked behind the bar. And they kind of felt that that was an ideal thing to do. It would mean that we would obviously be able to have a roof above our head, but also to get a half decent income. And that was interesting. So at the age of 13, there were some great things. I was able to hang around the jukebox, and when Mal came to change the vinyl, I would be the benefactor and the benefactor, and my 80s record collection on vinyl is absolutely fabulous as a result. We had a pool room, so my friends could come over and we played pool and arcade games and things like that. Also, I used to nick things from the cellar and go out and drink cider in fields and go smoking down the local beck. God, I was a bit of a naughty girl. And I was kind of largely sort of left alone, really. But equally, there was, some bad things around being left alone. So my sisters actually decided to leave home. They didn't really want to live in a pub. So it was quite lonely, really. I was on my own, obviously with this huge community called a pub. But it was an interesting time. I mean, the bad things, as well as sort of losing my sisters at that point, was that, when you live in a pub, you see alcoholism up really, really close and the thing that it can do to people. And of course, we lost some people within that community as well. And I never really saw my parents. They were up at 7. They taught me the art of hard work and often in bed by sort of 1 or 2 o'clock. So actually, when I probably needed focus and help and support from them in terms of school and college, I didn't really get that. So I actually did the bare minimum at school and college. I got decent grades, but actually I could have done much, much better, really.
And how has all that shaped how you are now, do you think? It must have, there's a lot of up and downs in that childhood. So how has that shaped how you are now?
Well, I think, I've talked about the bad things. There were some really fabulous lessons that I learned. I realise, and talking, to colleagues about this the other day, we were talking about pubs and churches and mosques and synagogues and how they are genuine hubs for kind of local communities. Now, growing up in this, local village pub, it really was a genuine hub. It really was a genuine community. I saw really lonely people go for comfort and support. I saw old people, go and buy a half a mild and, sit there for 6 hours playing dominoes with their friends rather than be alone in their own house at home. And also, like when there was really bad weather in the hurricanes in 1987, we all got trapped in the village for about 4 days. So we were, able to kind of feed people and, give them burgers out of the freezer and milk and all of these things. The farmers would bring milk to us and then we'd distribute it. And it really was a proper hub for the community, along with the church and the village as well. I think the things that I really learned was, I've said this to my kids, you should work in a pub, you should work in a restaurant or a shop if you really want to understand people, transactional analysis, dynamics, communities, all of these things. because I learned some really good skills. I learned to remember people's names and faces, the drinks that they wanted, their food preferences. I also learned not to prejudge people. And I've got a story. And actually, when I was thinking about this earlier, I had a little bit of a tear. There was one guy, he was really scruffy, would come in every day, absolutely filthy. And he would come in exactly the same time every day, sit with his mates. He was loud, he was boorish, he would swear a lot. And at the age of 14, I kind of thought he was hilarious. But when he died, he left a lot of money behind the bar for my mum and dad for his wake. And, in the 80s, I think it was about £1,000, which was a huge amount of money back in those days. He was a rag and bone man, but he was probably the richest person in that bar. And he was really grateful for the part and the role that we played in his life to give him a home and a space, for this sweary old guy who, actually just needed us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing, Wendy, I learned about not judging a book by its cover, not just with him, but also there was a family of 4. They were really lovely. And at this point, mum and dad had just got the pub. There was a lot of money worries. We were, scratching to make ends meet. And this family of 4 came in. They were polite. They were wonderful, warm, generous, grateful. They loved their food. They ate everything up. And they asked for coffees. And I went and brought them coffees. And they'd done a runner.
Oh, no.
I know, it was awful. And I just remember being in tears and, apologising to my parents. I felt really guilty. And, it was a lot of money that we just didn't simply have to, lose at that point. And I'm a big believer in karma. I'd like to think that at some point there was some kind of recompense. But, ultimately, for me, it was about never, ever, judging a book by their cover. Everybody who came into that pub, has a story, has something to give. And, also there are people who are, downright nasty, but do without them in my life as well.
Do you think, because I've got so many questions, but I'm going to start with empathy. Do you think being around so many people and, as you said, sort of just going up and chatting to people, do you think that has helped you with empathy as a leader now?
Yeah, I think so. My kids get really annoyed at me. When I'm out and about, if I see somebody that I know in the street, I'll stop and talk to them. But even if I don't know people, if it's the postman or people on tills and supermarkets, I'm always interested in them. I always like to think that, just by saying a kind word, you can actually have an impact on someone, even if they're having a shitty day. And if they're having a shitty day and people really don't want to talk, then I know the signs as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not just kind of madly gabbing at people. But I think you're right. I have learned to listen. I do like to talk, but I do like to genuinely listen to people and actually listen to those answers. So you were talking about the zoo, kind of earlier, and it's like I knew that because I had heard you talk about going to the zoo already. And I think I do absorb a lot of information about people. So that definitely was a skill that my parents kind of taught me, and being in a pub taught me. Just little things often matter in somebody's day, particularly as we're kind of distributed and as we're working in these hybrid environments. Small things can matter if you remember those things.
And it obviously sparked an interest in community. How did you get into your first job, as it were, then? Tell us a little bit more about your first early jobs and onwards.
Okay, so the reality is my parents, again, had kind of issues and challenges around money. So I didn't go to university. And I think everybody who has met me has been really surprised by that fact. And for a long while, I think I kind of hid it. I didn't really want people to know that, Michelle had been to the University of Life rather than, Bath or Bristol or elsewhere. I actually went straight into work, and I worked for Norwich Union for a while. Didn't really like it, kind of group money pensions wasn't for me. So looked for a way out of it. And I actually took voluntary redundancy. I think it was in the first Black Friday, and saved up that money. I trained as a English as a foreign language teacher and planned to go to Japan. Didn't quite make it, but I did make it off to the Netherlands, where I taught English as a foreign language for 3 months and made some wonderful friends, had some incredible times, and then had to come back and sleep for nearly 2 weeks because of my lifestyle out there. And came back and was at a bit of a loose end, to be honest with you. And in growing up in Norwich at the time, you really only had a couple of opportunities. That was to work at Bernard Matthews and to be a turkey twizzler, or to work at Norwich Union. And I'd done the Norwich Union bit. So I really just had a few jobs. I was an electrical saleswoman. So, kind of used my empathic skills and my ability to be able to sell extra gin and tonics and crisps and upsell on salty snacks. Took that to television and white goods and things like that. And really bummed around for a while as all of my friends were going through university and starting their first jobs. And I think I realised I was going sort of nowhere fast, to be honest with you. So a friend of mine offered me the opportunity to move to London, to go and sleep on her floor and figure out, what I wanted to do with my career. And I think this was actually my really big break. I'm very thankful to Celine, so I'm sure that she's not listening to this, but I slept on her floor for nearly a year. She introduced me to a couple of wonderful people, Richard and Corinna Davis, who were a couple of really geeky programmers. They wouldn't mind me saying that. And they had brilliant product at the time. It sat between databases and also then very sort of nascent desktop publishing software. And I think they recognized in me somebody who could, I think, envisage a product.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of mucking about with early sort of websites and helping them with things like packaging and writing brochures. And they said to me, "Oh, would you like to be put through the CIM?" So they put me through the CIM and got a CIM set of qualifications and actually helped them with their very nascent marketing strategy. And actually, this was in the early 90s. So created a very early brand website, created a value-added resale channel, went over to places like Helsinki and Germany and the Netherlands and France and set up a VAR channel, did a lot of sort of early conferences, really learned it as I went along. And because,
Amazing.
I wasn't really mentored by them, I was given a free rein. I was able to kind of look at the books and go, oh, okay, let's apply that to this. And we did fabulously well. It was a really successful product with a really successful resale channel. And I think, in my sort of, early 20s, I got a bit fed up with B2B, to be honest with you, and wanted, this sort of nascent internet marketing, digital web chats, all of those kind of things. And I moved over to an agency called 4DC, Fourth Dimension Communications, which actually I still think was the first online PR agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I did things like SEO for S Club 7 and loads of web chats with celebrities. And I think we did, a lot of internet first. So things like a Discovery live webcast with Greg and Max at a point where people really weren't streaming things. So it was great. It really fed, I think, into my love of consumer brands and creativity. And we worked with a lot of really good PR agencies at the time. And I got poached by one of those PR agencies. So joined Lexis Public Relations as head of digital, set up the digital division. And we were working with people like Dove and Boots and Domino's. It was a really hot consumer PR agency. And we did a lot of firsts there as well. And I think that's when people were starting to talk about Web 2.0 and also social media as well, and worked on some incredible brands. So launching variants of Coca-Cola in Second Life, the metaverse before the metaverse and all of these things. And actually that's when I came to know you, Tamara, because we were doing quite similar things at a similar time.
I always think that it's kind of weird that we didn't know each other earlier because we were both sort of kicking about at the sort of the same time when social media was in its sort of nascent era. But yeah, it felt like almost we were sort of living parallel lives. But I'm glad we've met now.
I think that's really true. And as I've come to know you, we were talking the other day about some of the what was the concert that you did? It was like a Live Aid, but it was...
Net Aid with the BBC. Yes.
I was in the audience, not quite the same thing, but I was there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was behind the scenes working at the BBC, running their forums. Mm-hmm. And my brief was to interview the musicians as they came off stage. I had to grab them, get them to write in the forum so that the community could see what they were all saying. And of course, none of them wanted to type onto a computer. They've just come off stage. So I had to adapt really quickly and then just interview them, scribble it down on a piece of paper. And then I quickly turned it into David Bowie has just said this. And it was the most amazing. Yeah, I got to meet Keris Matthews. But there were bonkers things happening at that time, weren't there?
I think the thing is, there were no rules. And actually, what I would say now, there is a difference between what we see now and actually then. I think now there are some, definite channels and there are some definite rules, and we kind of play to that. I think there's still a lot of creativity. Don't get me wrong, but we were making things up as we went along. I remember working with IKEA, and what we had to do was try and prove to people up in Edinburgh that opening up an IKEA store, wasn't going to have a detrimental effect on traffic in the area. So what did we do? We put, a webcam in a plastic bag and a see-through bag and chucked it up on the top of IKEA and, kind of tracked, roundabouts and traffic. You wouldn't be able to do that now because of, number one, health and safety. You'd have to have a crane, to get you up there. But we just looked at, I think, challenges and problems and opportunities and made things up, as we went along. And in that, it was really liberating and very freeing. And we kind of made a lot of the rules up, I think, as we went along. And I just had a great time. I mean, it was fabulous. And I'm very sorry that we didn't, get to meet each other at that point, because I think we probably would have egged each other on to do even more crazier things.
And I was thinking while you were talking about all of the work you did with the celebrity chats, is that it quite possibly that you crossed over with what Wendy was doing at AOL as well.
Yeah, it's so funny. You talk about parallel lives. That was one of the things that I used to help with, was to really to type on behalf of the celebrities. So they would come in and the audience would be asking questions in chat rooms, and then I would be relaying them, typing back. And I did both S Club 7 and Keris Matthews, who you both mentioned. So the parallels are bonkers. I mean, it sounds like you've really met some amazing people and had some opportunities as a result of that. Celine and her floor in London. Are there is there anyone else that you'd like to sort of call out as people who've really supported you or influenced you in your career?
I was thinking about this, and these are people that they don't do the speaker circuits. They were never really, that famous. When I throw these names around, you'll probably have to, Google them, and you won't find much out about them. But they were quietly getting on with doing a wonderful job. So there were two people actually at Lexis who I thought were fabulous. One of these people I see on a regular basis, Libby Cavin. And, she sort of says, "Oh, I didn't teach you anything. You're fabulous, Michelle." Well, actually, she taught me to be a bit humble and humility. She taught me to really own my mistakes, and she taught me how to apologize. And I think, that would be one of my character flaws as a sort of third child. And I'm not going to use this as an excuse, me. But you try and get away without getting found out. And so actually apologizing and fessing up to your mistakes doesn't necessarily come naturally if you're in that sort of, order of things in a family. So she taught me really to own things if I did make a mistake, and to show that to clients and to quickly redress things as well. In the same agency, my line manager was Fiona Jolly. I think she's retired now, but she was fabulously strategic. And people often criticize PR agencies for not being strategic. I think one of the reasons that Lexis was so successful was it was, really fabulously strategic and also very, very creative, which is, a double threat. And Fiona really embedded that strategic thinking. And I think she drew out of me the ability to be able to distill quite creative ideas and bring it back to a fundamental truth. What fundamental truth are we trying to tell about this brand or this organization? So I would say Libby and Fiona from Lexis. But then I've learned so much from clients. And I think anybody who's been agency side, there are some clients that scare the knickers off you because you get that sort of sinking feeling when it's the status update, or you've got to present some ideas, or you've got to have that call with them. But actually, they're the clients that I think I've learned the most from. And I'm not to say that these guys scared the knickers off me, but Raluca Efford from Direct Line, Eva Applebaum from the BBC and also Rick Jones from Camelot. I think as clients, they pushed me exceptionally hard to do very, very good work for them. And I think that, I'm no longer agency side and haven't been for a very long time. But the best clients are the ones that see you as genuine partners and actually do push you to be, the very best of yourself when you're delivering good strategic work for them.
Yeah, such a great way to think about it. And coming back to you, talk to me about your leadership style, because I know that you're more extroverted, you've got very high empathy, but it would be great to just sort of hear it from you about what is your specific leadership style, would you say?
And this is the kind of question you ask the people that you're working with. I'm going to say that I'm still learning, and I'm learning how to be a leader. I was a consultant for a very long period of time, and actually I think that defines the way that you work and the way that you operate. So I would say as a leader, I'm still learning from good leaders, and I would count you as one of those, Tamara. I ask you questions, and I would say that you're one of my fabulous mentors in terms of leadership.
I've enjoyed our pandemic walks as well.
Oh, the pandemic walks were wonderful. We really needed those, didn't we? I'm very open, not just to people who are coaching me, but also to the people that I work with as well. I would say, to kind of encapsulate my style, I lead from the front.
Mm-hmm.
I find it really hard not to do. I like to get stuck in. I like to get things done. I definitely have a bias for action. I've got a picture on my wall called iterate, iterate, iterate. And I think that, you can sprint on things, you can give things a go. And I've learned that actually I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And what I need to do is to be just good enough and then to iterate and iterate and iterate that. And I think I've learned that over the last sort of 5 years or so. And I would say that I ask my team to do the same thing, do your very best, but we can keep iterating.
I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule of just, get it out when it's 80% and then work on the rest. But as a self-confessed slight control freak, I find that hard too.
Control freakery, perfectionism, all of these things. I mean, but they can be the enemies when you need to make things, kind of move quickly. And, I'm in a scale-up business, and you have to have a bias for action. You can't hang around, because there are platforms with bigger budgets and, hundreds of thousands of people working for them. So we do need to get things done, and we do need to lead from the front. I think, other things, I would like to think that I'm empathic. People do say that I'm kind. I'm a mum. I think I bring my maternal self to work, probably a little bit too frequently. I experienced kind of issues about being a working mum early in my career, but now I'm very happy to sort of be quite maternal in the workplace. And, the colleagues who I've worked with who've gone on to do really great things have said that, they really benefited from that caring side of me, which, not everybody will have seen. I think there's some people that I've worked with who would say, really? I didn't see this person in the workplace. But yes, I would like to think that I'm a kind leader who, I really deeply care about the people that I work with. Anyhow, I'm getting a bit emotional now. I didn't think I would.
Well, no, I mean, often people say this is a bit like a sort of therapy session, but I'm going to sort of hopefully not tip you over the edge. But what's the bravest thing that you've ever done?
Do you know what? I think one of the things about losing everything when you're really young is it teaches you not to be necessarily brave. I actually don't think that I'm a very, very brave person. I think people sort of looking outwards into me would say, yes, you are brave. Michelle, you're a former British kickboxing champion. You definitely took
just
some risks.
slip that.
Wait, what?
What? Clearly, you've not been looking at my Guild profile, because we asked people to, say something surprising about themselves. When I was 15, I was BKBU, British kickboxing champion in
Amazing.
the UK. Now, there wasn't a very large pool of female kickboxers at that point, so I can't sort of say, I would have gone on to international standard, but I loved my kickboxing. It was obviously, I don't know whether it was just sort of eating the wrong things in the 1980s, but probably an avenue for all of those E numbers and Sunny Delights that I was drinking at the point of time.
But congratulations. That's you say maybe there weren't that many, but it's an incredible achievement.
It's well, that's one of the reasons why I can hardly walk now, because a lot of kickboxing with very, very large men. So I used to, kind of try and kick people who were 6'5". But I wasn't very brave when I was doing that. I used to be violently sick before my fights, actually, and used to, get real stage fright. It wasn't about being hit. I wasn't bothered about that. It was about not performing well and not, doing my very best and not winning, actually. Oh my gosh, there we go. It is therapy, Tamara.
Actually, performance, though, is a lovely segue, because I want to talk to you a little bit about one of our shared passions, which is the choir. And also, Wendy is also another sort of choir person up in Scotland. But Michelle, you and I are actually in the same choir, the Natural Voices Choir in London.
We are, yeah. And you know what? I wish, again, a bit like meeting you, that I'd have discovered this, sooner rather than later. But I think I'm one of the younger ones there, though. I think I've got a few years in me yet at the choir. It's been, I think, the best thing that I've done, in the last decade or so. It's a genuine joy, the noise that you can make as a group of people. There are some fabulous singers in our choir, people who, when they get in front of the karaoke microphone as soloists, are wonderful. But I think the thing that the choir has done to me is to get me to hold back a bit, not be that loud karaoke person on the microphone, to moderate my voice, to listen to others, to breathe, to give people space. And it's incredible if you've not done it. Singing and dancing, these are two things that you can do for free. It releases endorphins, it gives me space to relax. It just makes me feel happy. I'm not at work, I'm not feeding the family. It's self-indulgent, it's amazing, and it's good for you. And we have a great time when we perform. People smile, and it's lovely making people smile, isn't it? There we go. There's the people pleaser in me. So it works on that basis.
Absolutely. And I think it sort of ticks the boxes of being able to relax outside of work, as you say, just because it's kind of almost like mindfulness. You cannot be concentrating on other things because you're trying to remember your harmonies and listen to everyone else. So, yeah, it's a great thing to do.
So, shall we move on to the part of the podcast where we get a bit more personal, as if we haven't already?
Wendy, what are you going to ask me now? My inside leg measurement?
We'll be gentle, I promise. So, what's your idea of a perfect weekend? Any guilty pleasures?
Oh, I have many guilty pleasures. Some I just can't talk about because, no, my guilty pleasure is really relaxing. I love to travel. So the last couple of years have been quite tough for me. I realise that I get my energy and I recharge my batteries from going out to new places and spaces, listening to new sounds, trying a language, tasting new things, visiting new places. And one of the things that I do when I'm on holiday is I have a hammock, a very large hammock, and I take and store up the best books that I possibly can. So my ideal weekend would be being somewhere warm, putting up my hammock, ignoring everybody else, and immersing myself into some probably mystical realism or a Murakami book, and just forgetting about the world outside me, not thinking about work for a couple of days.
That sounds heavenly. So what have you read recently that you've enjoyed?
I'm actually reading some Brené Brown books. That's not mystical realism. That's more around leadership and vulnerability and the kind of things that you need to embrace. Yeah. But I read a big old wedge of the Murakami book, Killing Condottieri. I don't know how to pronounce it. And actually all of the Hilary Mantel books, Wolf Hall, all the way through to Mirror and the Light. They're proper door wedges. I love reading. I was in a book club, and we were just rubbish at kind of meeting up with each other and actually getting through the book. So I don't put that pressure on myself anymore.
Yeah, quite right. On a completely different note, what advice would you give to your teenage self?
I think just talking through some of this stuff, I wouldn't say that there's sort of deep-seated things that upset me, but just thinking about the family and the loneliness, and actually at a quite hormonal time in my life, my life about changed. And I would say, Michelle, it's okay. These bits are going to teach you some really important lessons that you can take into your adult life. And actually, the skills around empathy and being an important part of a village and a community, and, learning how to talk to people and not just judging a book by its cover, and being able to talk to anybody. These are great skills, regardless of whether you go on and you become a business leader or, whether you open up your own shop. What a nice thing, to do. And it felt tough at the time. But I would say, it's okay. And, you've got all of your life ahead of you. And these are kind of lessons that you can take to your children.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get annoyed at you when they're, kind of tagging along behind you in the street and you've talked to the third person on your walk. But, I think both of my children recognise that it's a good skill to be able to, communicate to others. So it's all right. You'll get through this bit and there are good things to come.
What do you think is your personal superpower?
Actually, before COVID, I did have a superpower, and I've read about this. I've got a really, really good, or I had a very good sense of smell. So my husband's a firefighter, and he used to get really angry with me because I could smell burning toast, next door. I can actually, or could, smell people before they entered a room. I can smell milk, before it goes on the turn. And also it meant that I could, kind of tell a good wine from a bad wine as well. I had COVID quite badly, actually, and it has affected my sense of smell and my sense of taste. So I no longer have this superpower. But I think I like a laugh and a joke. And of course, in a workplace, you have to be very careful around that. So we do cheesy jokes and we do puns. I definitely won't win the Edinburgh Fringe Award, but I'm quite good at sort of off-the-cuff jokes. So yeah, I would say my personal superpower is terrible cheesy puns.
Love it. I love it. And if you were going to write a book, what would it be about?
So my kids don't give me compliments very often, and I certainly wouldn't put myself up as a model parent. But I think one of the things about operating in social media for a very long period of time, and even social media before it's called social media, is that I think I understand how people work and also how these platforms work as well. So when they were growing up, I was very clear in telling them about the dangers, but also the brilliant things that can happen on social media. And what they say is that they get sort of taught at school all about the dangers and not about the ability to be able to explore your creative self, to meet people from around the world, to have a place in the space when you're lonely. There are things that they have to kind of, think about: their self-image, self-esteem, trust, not giving too much data away, understanding that they're being advertised to, all of these things. But they felt the way that I approached it to them was really good. And actually, they then took that information to their friends as well, who were grateful. So they actually said, I should write a book on it. And I think at some point, I've got hammocks and books to read, but I think I might just kind of put my thinking to a guide for parents and also for kids as well.
Well, let's agree that you're definitely going to do
yes,
that.
Please.
Then you heard it here.
Yes, please. And can you do it 20 years ago?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's interesting. And, I'm in a number of communities and kind of groups with women. And still, I've got young daughters and they have to be careful about these things. The stories I hear about trolls and rape threats and all of these things, it's there in front of our eyes. And so it's not just for children as well. I think that we do have to be careful and cautious around these things and to support each other, in coming forward and kind of dealing with these things. And I know that a lot of our networks and communities are especially good at doing that. So maybe a book and also the support community around it as well.
Perfect. Now, if Tamara and I had it within our power to gift you an extra hour every day, what would you do with it?
Oh, I was going to say get in my hammock and read the book, but I've done that already, haven't I?
You've done that at the weekend.
Yeah. Do you know what? I've got to an age now where I love food and I love drink and the finer things in life. I probably would need to exercise for that extra hour. I've got an electric bike and it gets me around very quickly, but unfortunately it doesn't burn off enough calories. So I'm going to do a high power, high intensity workout. How about that?
Brilliant. I think that might be the first time we've had that answer.
Probably because all of these leaders are, fabulous and they look after their bodies.
How would your friends describe you? And is that the same as how you'd like them to describe you?
So I cheated a bit, I have to admit. I have listened to your other interviews with people, and I realised that this was one of those questions that you do ask people. So I asked 4 of my oldest friends, people that I've known since my early teens, and everybody said fun, thoughtful, caring, hardworking, high energy. My best friend, Emily, said that I was tenacious, and I will take that as a compliment, that I was consistent, and that I was very good at being a broad observer about what has been happening in my industry for a long period of time. She's known me for forever. She said I was a good peacemaker and a resolver of sticky situations, so maybe I should have been a diplomat, but clearly didn't do well enough at school and college for that. Some people have said I'm quirky. Some people said I'm a good cook. I think I'm probably the second best cook in my house because my husband is an excellent cook, and that's why I probably need to do my high intensity workout as well. I think how I'd like them to describe me is dependable, actually. And I would say with any of my friends, if they called me at any time, night or day, if they needed me, I would drop everything to be with them because, I really value my friends and my friendships. And I would like to be seen as, somebody who could be that person who can rescue people, regardless of whether it's, from a burning building or because they're feeling sad or lonely. So that's how I'd like them to describe me, I think.
That's so wonderful. It feels like such a nice exercise to go through to sort of reach out to your friends and ask them their genuine thoughts as well.
Do you know, I don't think people do this enough. We go on family holidays with friends and families, and our kids are teenagers. And, you have a bit of banter and people are a little bit mean to each other and whatever. And we actually instilled this thing that on our holidays, we would go around the kind of community, our little camping community, and we'd all have to say one nice thing about somebody else who was sitting there around the fire or, that you were eating with. And I think my kids and the kids that we went camping with said it was one of the nicest things that had ever happened to them. To have, 10 or 12 people saying one nice thing about them was just joyful and joyous. So, I think when you ask your friends, how would you describe me? You get some nice things back. Of course, you get things like, occasionally violent, but that's probably my kickboxing past and, annoying and noisy. But I glossed over those ones. But I think we should not necessarily ask for compliments, but give people the spaces to be able to receive those compliments as well.
Well, that feels like a lovely place to end it. Michelle, it's been such a pleasure to get to know you even better, and you definitely count as one of our genuine humans. Before we close off, is there anything that we haven't covered that you wish that we'd asked, or anything that you'd like to, any sort of closing thoughts that you'd like to finish with?
I would say, what we're doing at Guild, and, bring it back to the here and the now, is that a lot of people are talking about community. And I think there are some genuine communities out there. You can't force fit a community. Communities often happen, probably not by your design if you're a brand or a business or an organization. But I would say, for everybody, every marketer, certainly I know that you're interviewing leaders and marketers as well, is to embrace the ideas and the concepts behind community, because it can tell you so much about you, yourself, your product, your service, your team, your colleagues, where you're going. It can be a mirror. It can show you your purpose. And also you can build great things with communities as well. So, at the heart of, I think, my career has always been this return to community. The pub was the first community, and now Guild, we're building a platform where people can host these. So, community is not just the latest kind of buzzword in marketing. Open yourself up to it as a leader and learn from your communities around you, and also your local communities and your choir community and all of those things as well, and seize the insights and the opportunities that come your way.
You've been listening to Genuine Humans, brought to you by The Social Element. If you loved what you heard, remember to subscribe, or you can find out more at www.thesocialelement.agency.